The dog's name was Titan, and he was bleeding out on the floor of Hargrove Memorial's main entrance when Lena Marsh first saw him. She had been heading to the break room, 12 hours into a 14-hour shift. She was running on vending machine coffee and the particular brand of stubbornness that had carried her through nursing school, 3 years on a med-surg floor, and one very bad divorce. She wasn't supposed to notice anything else. She was supposed to get her coffee, maybe eat half a granola bar, and go back to room 412 where Mr. Fitzpatrick was recovering from a hip replacement and kept asking her if she was single. She noticed the dog. He came through the sliding doors first, a German Shepherd, massive, wearing a tactical vest with a unit patch she recognized immediately. Black and gold. SEAL Team 7. The vest had been torn open at the left shoulder, and the fur beneath was matted dark with blood. The dog's gait was wrong. 3 legs working, 1 dragging, he made no sound. That was the part that caught in her throat. A dog that size, bleeding like that, and completely silent. Still doing his job even when his body was failing. Behind him came the handler. Sergeant First Class Ray Dunbar was half carrying himself, one hand braced against the door frame, the other clutching a leash he clearly refused to drop. He had a field bandage pressed to his side and blood on his face from a cut above his eye that had dried in a streak like war paint. He was maybe 30, maybe younger, the kind of young that combat ages into something harder to read. He looked at Lena the way injured soldiers sometimes look at nurses, not with hope, exactly, but with the specific relief of someone who has finally found the right person. "His name is Titan," the sergeant said. "He pulled me out of a drainage tunnel when the IED went off. He stopped, his jaw worked. He needs help." Lena was already moving toward the dog. She didn't think about policy. She thought about the way Titan's breathing was labored and shallow, the way he'd positioned himself against Dunbar's leg even now, even hurt, trying to be between his handler and whatever came next. She thought about the blood. She dropped to one knee on the hospital floor and ran her hands along the dog's shoulder, feeling for the wound, already doing the math in her head. Depth, location, what she'd need. Laceration, deep muscle involvement, she said, mostly to herself. "He's lost a lot of blood. We need to—" "Excuse me." The voice came from behind her. Lena recognized it before she turned around. She'd been working at Hargrove for 3 years. She knew that voice the way you know a weather pattern, not the words, exactly, but the pressure drop that came before it. Diane Coldwell, Associate Administrator for Patient Services, was standing 10 feet away in a charcoal blazer and heels that made no sense for a hospital floor. She was 51, immaculate, and currently wearing the expression of someone who had just stepped in something unpleasant. "Nurse Marsh," Coldwell said. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" "I'm assessing an injured animal," Lena said, without looking up. "This is a human medical facility." Coldwell's voice had the particular flatness of someone who has rehearsed authority so long it has become reflex. "We do not treat animals here. You know that. I know you know that." "He's a military working dog," Lena said. She had her hands on Titan now, applying pressure to the wound. The dog turned his head and looked at her with brown eyes that were exhausted and trusting and completely steady. "He's hemorrhaging. The nearest veterinary emergency clinic is 6 miles away. He won't make it in a car. He'll be dead in 20 minutes. Then I suggest the sergeant contact the appropriate services." Coldwell walked closer, lowering her voice with the particular precision of someone who wants to be authoritative without being recorded. "This is a liability issue. The hospital's insurance does not cover treatment of Diane." Lena looked up at her then. "There is a dog in front of me that is dying. His handler is standing right there, and he is also injured and needs to be seen. I am going to help this dog." Coldwell was quiet for a moment. Her chin rose slightly. "If you continue," she said, "I will consider it insubordination and a direct violation of facility policy. I will have no choice but to place you on administrative suspension pending termination." Lena looked at her for exactly 2 seconds. Then she turned back to Titan. "Get me a trauma kit," she said to the orderly, who had stopped in the hallway with the expression of someone watching a train derailment. "And someone get this sergeant to Bay 3. The next 40 minutes were the longest of her career. She had worked trauma before, 2 years at St. Anthony's before Hargrove, where the ER was understaffed and violent, and taught her to think faster than she'd ever thought in nursing school. She knew wound care the way musicians know scales, but she had never worked on a dog, and Titan was not inclined to make it simple. He was trained, cooperative, exhausted, but the pain kept breaking through, and every time he flinched, she had to reorient, recalibrate, talk him through it with the same steady voice she used on frightened patients. "You're okay," she told him. "You're doing so well. You're almost through it." He believed her. That was the thing about Titan. He believed her completely, the way animals believe people who are being honest with them. He kept his body still through the cleaning and the suturing and the bandaging, only lifting his head once to look toward the hallway where Dunbar had been taken, just checking, just making sure. "He's safe," Lena said. "Your guy is safe." Titan put his head back down. She was washing her hands when Coldwell came back. She was accompanied by 2 members of hospital security, not the overnight guys Lena knew by name, but the daytime zone supervisors, Prentice and whoever Prentice had brought with him. And she was carrying a printed form that Lena recognized as a notice of immediate administrative action. The kind you sign when they're not asking anymore. "Nurse Marsh," Coldwell said. Her voice was even. She had composed herself completely. "Your employment with Hargrove Memorial is suspended effective immediately, pending a full review. You are required to surrender your badge." Lena dried her hands on a paper towel. She had spent the last 40 minutes covered in blood that was not hers, working on a floor she'd never planned to work on, doing something she'd never been trained to do, because the alternative was watching something die that did not have to die. She felt, in that moment, something that wasn't quite anger and wasn't quite grief. It was more like clarity, the kind you only get when the comfortable fictions fall away and you see the situation exactly as it is. She unclipped her badge. She set it on the counter without throwing it. "I'd like to get my things from my locker," she said. "Security will escort you," Coldwell said. "You have 15 minutes. She got her bag. She got her jacket. She got the photograph she kept taped inside her locker door. Her sister's kids at Christmas, the one where her nephew had chocolate frosting on his nose, and she put it in her bag without looking at it. Prentice walked behind her the whole way, which she supposed was policy, and he at least had the decency to look uncomfortable about it. When they escorted her out through the side entrance, not the main lobby, she noticed, not where anyone could see. She stood in the parking lot in the October cold and tried to remember where she'd parked. Her hands were shaking a little. She pressed them flat against her thighs and made herself breathe. Her car was in Section C. She remembered that now. She walked to it. She sat down in the driver's seat, and she did not cry, because she was too tired and too clear-headed, and because she had done the right thing and she knew it, and those 2 things, exhaustion and certainty, don't leave room for much else. She drove home. She called her sister. She did not call a lawyer, not yet, because it was 6 in the morning, and lawyers didn't need to be called at 6 in the morning unless something was actively on fire, and she thought she had a little time before that. She did not sleep. At 11 that morning, her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, Virginia area code, nothing she had in her contacts. She almost didn't pick up. "Miss Marsh?" The voice on the other end was male, mid-40s, accent that placed him somewhere in the Upper South. "My name is Commander Stephen Ardell. I'm with Naval Special Warfare Command. I believe you were the medical professional who treated Titan last night at Hargrove Memorial." She sat up straighter on her couch. "I was." "Titan is recovering well," Ardell said. "The veterinary team at Andrews confirmed your fieldwork this morning. They said the suturing was," a pause, something that might have been a suppressed smile in his voice, unusually precise for a non-veterinary practitioner. "I read a lot," she said, and immediately felt how strange that sounded. He laughed. It was a real laugh, not the polished kind. "Messrs. Marsh, Sergeant Dunbar and I would like to come and speak with you this afternoon, if you're available. There are some things we'd like to discuss regarding what happened last night. I should tell you," she said, "that I no longer work at Hargrove Memorial. They terminated me this morning." There was a silence. "Yes," Commander Ardell said carefully. "We are aware of that." She gave him her address. They arrived at 2 in the afternoon, and they did not arrive quietly. She heard the vehicles before she saw them. 2 black SUVs and something larger, a military transport, parking in front of her apartment complex, with the calm efficiency of people who are entirely accustomed to arriving places and having those places pay attention. Commander Ardell was tall, iron-haired, and wearing dress whites that looked tailored. Beside him was Sergeant Dunbar. Her first time seeing him cleaned up, standing straight, 16 stitches above his eye, and the bearing of someone who had decided the universe owed him nothing and was fine with that. And on a leash beside Dunbar, moving carefully but moving, his shoulder bandaged and his tactical vest folded over Dunbar's arm, was Titan. The dog saw her on the steps and his tail moved, just once, just slightly, the controlled enthusiasm of a working dog who hadn't entirely forgotten his manners. "Hey, buddy," she said. Her voice came out rougher than she expected. Dunbar let the leash go slack. Titan walked to her and pressed his head against her knee and stayed there. "He doesn't do that," Dunbar said. He sounded a little undone by it. "He's expressing gratitude," Ardell said practically. "Dogs understand obligation, Sergeant. We could learn from that." They sat in her living room, Ardell and Dunbar on the couch, Titan on the floor beside her with his head in her lap, which she suspected was also a departure from normal protocol and which nobody mentioned. Ardell explained what he was there to explain in the methodical way of someone who had given bad news enough times that the sequence was second nature. But this was not bad news, so the sequence felt slightly misapplied. The unit had been notified at 0200 of Titan's situation. A call had been made to Hargrove Memorial at 0400 requesting information about who had treated him and the circumstances of that treatment. The hospital administrator on duty, not Coldwell, someone else, had confirmed that a nurse named Marsh had been terminated for providing that treatment. At that point, Ardell said the decision had been made to escalate. "Escalate," Lena repeated. "Naval Special Warfare Command operates with a specific mandate regarding the welfare of military working dogs," Ardell said. "Titan carries a rank. He is formally a non-commissioned officer of the United States Navy. What happened to him last night and what happened to you in response to helping him falls within our purview to address." She looked down at the dog in her lap. "He has a rank, Staff Sergeant," Dunbar said quietly. "Outranks me by one. I've never let him forget it." There was a pause in which Dunbar looked at the floor and Ardell looked at Dunbar with the expression of a man who had watched a soldier be carefully invulnerable for a long time. "What happens next?" Lena asked. Ardell straightened. "This afternoon at 3 o'clock, representatives from NSWC will be present at a meeting with Hargrove Memorial's Board of Directors. We have requested that meeting. They agreed within 20 minutes of our calling." Something moved across his face that wasn't quite satisfaction, but was adjacent to it. "We will be requesting, formally on the record, that the actions taken against you be reviewed and reversed. We will also be requesting an explanation of the policy that led to those actions, and whether that policy has implications for how veterans seeking care at Hargrove Memorial are being treated generally." "You're going to the board," she said. "We are going to the board," he said, "with documentation, with Sergeant Dunbar's full account of last night's events, with the veterinary assessment from Andrews, and with several colleagues of mine who have strong feelings about what happened." He paused. "Some of them are also in the building." She looked out her front window. The military transport was still parked at the curb. 2 men in uniform were standing beside it. Another one was on the phone by the second SUV. "How many people did you bring?" she asked. Ardell smiled. It was a small, composed smile that told her exactly nothing about how many people he'd brought. "Enough," he said. "The meeting at Hargrove Memorial that afternoon was not public, but the parking lot was, and the parking lot was full. 3 black SUVs, a command vehicle, 7 men in uniform, 4 of whom were in dress whites, and 3 of whom were in something considerably more tactical, standing with the specific stillness of people who know how to fill a space. Hospital staff on break stood at the windows. Someone posted something on social media that Lena didn't see until later, just a photo, ground level, the convoy of vehicles, and the men in uniform walking toward the main entrance in a line. The caption said, "They fired a nurse for saving a military K9. The SEALs just showed up at the hospital. It had 40,000 shares by dinner time. She wasn't in the meeting. She was at home with Titan, who had been left in her care for the afternoon with the diplomatic neutrality of a decision that hadn't been made out loud." Dunbar had handed her the leash at her front door and said, "He likes chicken, not the kind in the can. He's been through enough." She gave him real chicken. He ate it with the focused dignity of a soldier at mess. Then he lay down on her kitchen floor and slept, and she sat at her table and drank her 3rd cup of coffee and looked at him sleeping and thought about the night before. and the moment she'd made her choice on the floor of that lobby, and whether she would make it again. She knew the answer. She had always known the answer. Her phone rang at 5:17. Ardell. "The board has agreed to a full independent review of the termination," he said. "They have also agreed to place Administrator Coldwell on administrative leave pending that review. In the interim, the hospital's legal counsel has indicated that they anticipate reinstating your position within 72 hours. She let out a breath she had been holding since 6 that morning. "There's something else," Ardell said. "The board has requested that you be present at a brief statement to the press tomorrow morning. They intend to acknowledge what happened and—" He paused in a way she was starting to recognize as a sign that he was choosing words carefully, frame it appropriately. "They want to get ahead of the story," she said. "Yes, because 40,000 people have already seen the parking lot photo. It's closer to 200,000 now," he said. "Yes." She looked at Titan sleeping on her kitchen floor. He had been bleeding in a hospital lobby 11 hours ago. He was still wearing the bandage she'd put on him, white gauze wrapped neatly over his shoulder, slightly too human in its precision for a veterinary job. She had done that in the middle of the night, on her hands and knees on a linoleum floor, while someone told her she was going to be fired for it. "I'll be there," she said. The press statement was at 9 in the morning, on the steps of Hargrove Memorial, in the pale cold of an October Thursday. Lena wore her own clothes. She didn't have her scrubs anymore, hadn't had time to get them from her locker, and she stood slightly to the left of the hospital's board chair, a man named Leonard Packer, who had the expression of someone doing penance in public and had accepted this as his due. Coldwell was not present. Coldwell was, according to the brief text Lena had received from a colleague that morning, currently in a meeting with HR that had been going on since 8 and showed no signs of concluding. Dunbar was there, in dress uniform, standing at the edge of the steps. Titan was beside him in his tactical vest, the clean one, the backup, Dunbar had told her, not the one with the blood on it. The dog stood straight, scanning the assembled press, with the professional attention of a senior NCO at a formation, and Lena had to look away from him for a moment because something in her chest was doing something inconvenient. Packer spoke first. He read from a prepared statement about Hargrove Memorial's commitment to the community, its respect for military service, its recognition that the events of 2 nights prior had fallen short of the standards the hospital held itself to. He used the phrase, "did not reflect our values," twice, which Lena noted and filed away. Then he said that Nurse Lena Marsh's actions had been not only courageous, but medically sound and entirely in keeping with the highest traditions of her profession, and that the hospital was committed to her reinstatement and to a thorough review of the policies that had led to her termination. A reporter asked if Coldwell would be returning to her position. Packer said the review process was ongoing. Another reporter asked Dunbar how Titan was doing. Dunbar looked at the dog. The dog looked at the cameras with the serene indifference of someone who had recently survived significantly worse. "He's good," Dunbar said. "He'll be back on duty in 6 weeks." He paused. "He already wants to." Someone asked Lena if she had anything to say. She stepped to the microphone. She had not prepared anything. She was 31 years old and had been a nurse for 7 of those years, and she was very tired, in the good and solid way you get tired when you have done what you came to do. "I made a decision in the middle of the night," she said, "that I was not going to let something die that didn't have to die. I would make the same decision again. I don't think that needs more explanation than that." She stepped back from the microphone. Someone in the assembled group started clapping, then more people. She didn't look to see who started it. She was looking at Titan, who had turned his head toward her with the calm attention of someone who understood that the most important things rarely require a lot of words. Dunbar caught her eye and gave her a single nod. She nodded back. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon when nothing dramatic was happening, no transport vehicles, no press, no men in dress whites, Lena Marsh returned to Hargrove Memorial and clipped her new badge to her scrubs and walked back onto the med-surg floor like she had simply been away on leave, which was technically now how HR had recategorized the whole episode. Fitzpatrick and 412 had been discharged and replaced by a retired school teacher from Maryland, who wanted to know if Lena had seen the news story about the nurse who saved the military dog. Lena said she had heard something about it. The school teacher said it restored her faith in people. Lena took her vitals, adjusted her IV line, and told her she was going to be just fine. In a veterinary recovery facility at Andrews Air Force Base, Titan was working his way through supervised exercise protocols with the focused cooperation of someone who had already decided that the timeline for return to duty was more of a suggestion than a limit. His chart, updated daily by a vet tech named Briggs who had adopted 3 rescue dogs and cried at every adoption video she had ever watched, noted consistent progress and occasionally, in the margin, a small note that said simply, "Good boy." He was.